final word in sports all across. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day. So join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Championship-type football, where you got to make critical plays in critical situations, and we were able to do that, whether it was a 4th and 5, punt return, covering kicks. There were just a lot of critical plays. We won the turnover margin. Just really proud of the perseverance of our guys, especially how we played in the third quarter, got control of the ball game.
The good thing, it was a hurting locker room at the end of the day, and that's a positive thing because we invest an awful lot. We put in an awful lot. And I know our guys had belief that this was going to happen today, and we gave a great effort. It just wasn't quite good enough. We're going to give them off tomorrow and get back Monday morning and get ready for Florida. And that's what I told them.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network from downtown Columbia after another wild and woolly weekend of football to talk about with you tonight. 800-956-7266, the number 800-956-7266. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic.
Hello, sir.
Good evening. Professor Tom Hayes is off the next couple of nights. Brian Leonard behind the bulletproof glass, taking your phone calls. Couple of lines already open for you, so if you want to jump on board and talk about what you saw, what you heard, what you experienced this past weekend, that is what we are here to do. We'll have our first and 10 segments with Zach Willis coming up in our second hour. David Shelton with a look back at high school football playoff action Friday nights. And, of course, a visit with the voice of the Panthers, Mick Mixon, all coming in hour number 2. If you're headed home in the dark, you're in traffic, be patient. Thank you for being with us. When you get home, take us with you. Don't leave us in the car. That's not a nice thing to do. Take us inside on your laptop, your iPhone, your regular phone, your computer, pull us up on your television. There's all kind of ways to get us when you get inside, or just listen to your radio station. That's another novel way to get us.
I'm looking forward to Zach's talk this week because I missed it last week being at the basketball game. So I have some pointed questions to ask him about mechanics and stuff that I saw in Athens.
Well, that's why we pay him the big bucks to do that.
Do we pay him?
Let's talk about our games. I was in Raleigh. You were in Athens.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, as far as Clemson is concerned, it was a struggle all game long against NC State. Kelly Bryant, as Dabo Swinney said yesterday, had his worst game of the season, yet somehow, some way, the Tigers found a way to win. Maybe it was the laptop on the sideline, maybe not. I'm not sure how much the laptop contributed.
That's funny.
I checked the stats. I didn't see where the laptop had any rushing yards, passing yards, or receiving yards.
It's weird. I watched the game twice. Any game that I don't go to, I watch twice. And I have to say, the NC State fans complaining about the officiating and complaining about the laptop, those are very unfounded complaints. And I don't mean to sound like a South Carolina State homer here when I say that, but to me, it just sounds like a lot of sour grapes in my mind. And, Clemson, as you mentioned, played a really inconsistent football game, about as inconsistent a game as they played in any of their wins. Kelly Bryant played about as poorly as they had in any of their wins. But, 5 plays made the game in that fourth quarter. And I was watching that game, very intently while the Georgia game was going on. And then while I watched it again earlier today, I 5 plays stood out to me. The Kelly Bryant decision to punt instead of go for it on that fourth down. The pooch punt by Kelly Bryant was an ingenious move by Dabo Swinney. The third down conversion to Deion Kane, and then the touchdown pass later on in that drive. The third down stop of Samuels there that forced them to punt it deep, and then the Tavian Feaster touchdown. Those 5 plays, in my mind, changed the complexion of that football game in Clemson's favor. And, oh, by the way, the Hunter Renfrow fourth down conversion also helped a lot as well.
Okay, well, I have nothing else to add to that. Tell us about the game you actually went to.
The game I went to, it was what? Oh, I didn't mean to bogart all of your stuff.
I mean, I was in Raleigh at Carter Finley Stadium actually watching the game, but go ahead. You watched it from your Barca lounger.
I did.
A couple of times, so you obviously had a better view than I did. Now tell us about South Carolina, Georgia.
I tell you what, South Carolina, you have no qualms with South Carolina if you are a Gamecock fan. You have to have no qualms, except for the fact that the team didn't tackle worth a darn. And that's the thing that would make you upset because The defense was the thing of was the positivity that you had walking into Sanford Stadium on Saturday. That was the one thing that you thought was going to keep you in the football game. And for a while it did, but too much time on the field spent by the South Carolina defense, not enough rhythm offensively is partially to blame because of that. And the fact, too, that Georgia's just got a lot of talent on this side of the football, especially when you think about the fact that they can run out not only Nick Chubb, not only Sonny Michel, not only DeAndre Swift, Brian Herrien, Christian Payne, all these types of guys, Riley Ridley, too. I mean, they have so many guys at skill positions who can control the football. I would even venture to say that their skill positions are deeper than Alabama's. Alabama's line is better. Alabama's grit and, pure experience is better. But Georgia might have the best set of skill position players in the NCAA.
Well, we're going to find out in a few weeks.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're going to meet in the SEC championship game in all probability. Okay, so that's Will's take on the two games, and I'm here to answer any questions if you want to talk to somebody who was actually at the Clemson game. 800-956-7266 is our number.
Why are you going to start up all salty like that?
Email talkback@sportstalksc.com and on Twitter @sportstalksc. Let's go ahead and jump to the phone calls. Hear what's on your mind about the weekend. We begin with Harrison in Spartanburg. I'm sorry, Harris or Harrison?
Harrison.
Hey, Harrison. How are you?
Good, Phil. So I don't know if you remember back in SEC Media Days week in July, you made a comment that Georgia fired Rick for Kirby and 10 wins was more than 8.
Mm-hmm.
And I called in and I said, that's obviously true, but be a little bit patient. Even that 1 year in the first year of transition. And I just wanted to call and see if you wanted to amend your take on that and what you think after this 9-0 start.
Well, I think Mr. Richt is also 9-0 down in Miami, isn't he?
Yeah, but come on now. That you mocked Georgia, and all of a sudden in year 2, we're number 1 in the country. And you also, right when I brought that up, you immediately deflected and said you didn't, sure if he was any better than Muschamp was it Florida, and now he's 2-0 against Muschamp. And listen,
with Rick's players, to be brutally honest, with Rick's players.
Yeah, well, you can explain it away any way you want, but
that's how I explained it.
What'd you say?
That's how I explained it. He's using guys that Mark Richt recruited, and Nick Chubb, Sonny Michel, Fromm, all those guys. I mean, Fromm is one of Kirby Smart's guys, obviously, but in my mind, much of that skill position skill set still sits on Mark Richt's credit, at least from my perspective.
I know. Well, really, I was talking with Phil about.
We stand up for Phil, though. We stand up for each other.
Phil can handle his own conversations. Go ahead.
and I understand it. And I'm, to be totally frank, I don't think that Georgia's better than Alabama, and I think we got a long way to go. We're gonna have a really tough time over in Auburn this week. And I'm not saying that we've arrived by any stretch of the imagination, but I made a mental note back in July when you basically were questioning it, and it ended up working out well for all parties involved.
Mm-hmm.
Rick needed to change, Georgia needed to change, and I think you need to give a little bit of credit to Kirby and just not explain.
Listen, he's going to be at this stage. He'll be the SEC Coach of the Year, and deservedly so. I mean, if you guide your team through an undefeated run in the regular season, which is something that they're pointing to now. Of course, the Auburn game, I think that's in Auburn, right? That's going to be really, really tough because Auburn's good. I mean, Auburn is certainly capable, but let's just say they run it out. He'll be Coach of the Year, deservedly so. He's done a great job, and his recruiting continues to be going at a very high level. I mean, the biggest poacher in his backyard right now is Clemson, and he's got to see if he can fend off Clemson from some of the people that he's still trying to get. But, Georgia with the young quarterback and still with some young people in the skill position area and all the younger players who are having to play now that are getting experience with this great year, they're going to be good for the next couple of years. But I see South Carolina 2018, that's been my target date for South Carolina to have a chance to win the East, and they'll have that chance next year, and I'll tell you why when we come back.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
And we're back on a Monday night from downtown Columbia. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, 800-956-7266. Oh, be still my heart as we look at Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
That Matthew Stafford, Brett Hundley matchup is exactly what I'm sure ESPN wanted.
Yeah, well, listen, I didn't
season.
want this, but you know what? You got to go do it. I think Hundley's good enough to steer the Packers if the defense can step it up a little bit. My goodness, Dom Capers, I just don't know. I don't understand why you keep calling for blitz with a secondary that can't cover.
I mean,
you leave your guys back there one-on-one. They can't cover.
I don't think he knows how to play defense without blitz.
I agree.
That's
Dom Capers' MO. You dive by it, but too many times the Packers are just giving up huge catches and huge gains right now.
It's that Pittsburgh mentality, man. You can't shake it.
800-956-7266 is our phone number here on Sports Talk, and I've got a busy hour and a half still to come for you. As we're brought to you by South Carolina soybean farmers and their checkoff. Learn more at scsoybeans.org. Pork powered by soy. We continue with your phone calls here on this Monday night. We were both at basketball games yesterday as well. I was in Columbia. Will was up at Clemson, and we'll touch on that too here in a little bit. But kudos to NCAA basketball for putting on those hurricane relief games, and the coaches involved seem to really love it, especially in Columbia, where Virginia Tech spent the weekend scrimmaging on Saturday and then playing the game on Sunday. Buzz Williams was very appreciative about everything that went on with his team in Columbia.
And the Rick Barnes situation at Clemson, I think he received a muted response. There were a couple of smattering of boos, but he was very appreciative of not only being included, but just the fact that he was able to kind of create, some old memories. He saw Terrell McIntyre, who's now on Brad Brownell's staff, and said that, they even have a play that's named in his honor that they still run because they basically were able to use him to the biggest extent of their offense when he was here at Clemson. But in my mind, it was a great thing. They raised $5,100. I know that they didn't necessarily release a number, but I know that Frank and Buzz in Columbia said that they at least put in $5,000 each in addition to what they'd already raised. But a great thing, and it's different too with these games. It's different than their regular exhibitions because they actually get, they play in front of a crowd, especially against these Power 5 teams. They'll play these secret scrimmages against the Power 5 teams, and no one will be around there. So it gives a nice little extra bit of juice, and I love that.
Not a secret anymore. USC and Virginia Tech have played 9 straight years in that scrimmage. So when they're scrimmaging in the preseason, they're scrimmaging each other.
They said they'll never do it in the regular season because they're such good friends.
James in Rock Hill, we thank you for waiting here on Sports Talk. Good evening.
How are we doing?
Good. How you doing?
Pretty good. I just want to, make a statement, and then I'll hang up and listen to you guys. I just, and my father and I, we were big Clemson fans. We went to Raleigh this weekend. Obviously you're going to get your fans. It's everywhere. You get your fans that are really, really nice, but you get your fans that are really, really bad. But it should continually blow my mind that the head football coach of the university is slandering Clemson by coming up with these accusations of flat tops, and then you want to blame the referees. It's no disrespect to NC State. I thought they played a terrific football game. I definitely, as a Clemson fan, would not want to play them again. But that is just terrible. And if you're an NC State alumni or an NC State board member or whatever, I would be looking at this man like, just take your loss, man. You lost. You matched up very, very well with obviously what I think is one of the best 4 teams in the country, and it could have gone either way. But if things kind of went our way there towards the end, and I don't know, I don't, and I know Will didn't really like this, and I didn't really like it either. I didn't like when Dabo went into Syracuse's locker room.
No.
But I do like that the first thing that he said out of his mouth in the press conference is, it's not about us, it's about Syracuse. And that's the difference between Doran and Dabo, and Doran and any good Muschamp, Kirby Smart, anybody that is a good football coach. It's not, you don't blame everything. Sometimes things just don't go your way. Sometimes you just don't win. And you just got to take it like a man and not do what he's doing. And just as if you know, I got a couple of friends that are NC State fans, and they are just absolutely beyond embarrassed of the things that Doran is doing. And I think that's terrible for NC State, and I hate that for the university. But, you know, it was a good win for Clemson, and we squeaked out of there. I'm not really sure how. Oh, and the Bradley Chubb towel thing. I hope y'all have a blast talking about that. But I'm not even going to go into that. But, you know, I'm just glad that we got the win, and we'll definitely get Florida State's best shot this weekend, and see if we can't get back to, let's see, where we're Atlanta this year. But I love you guys' show. Just wanted to hear what you guys had to think about that. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, Doran did make a fool of himself in his post game by bringing up the computer thing. I didn't know anything about it, and we're standing around Dabo in his post game, and there was a reporter from a Raleigh news outlet was waiting just to ask that question at the very end, and said, Coach Doran made an accusation that you guys had a laptop on the sideline, and I guess was alleging or implying that you were using that to your advantage. And what's your response to that? And Dabo said, what are you talking about? He says, I don't know anything about a laptop on our sideline. Then Tim Beret, the SID, was standing in the background, and he said, you know, one of our GAs who works with our websites and with
social
media feed had a laptop back behind the bench area, and they were uploading pictures to their social media sites, and it was for a convenience standpoint. So they had to move. Apparently the ACC caught wind of it during the game. There is a rule that says you can have no technology on the sideline, you know, computers and things of that nature. Can you even have a cell phone on the sideline to look at?
I don't think so. You're not supposed to.
Anyway, they moved into the tunnel area away from there. But that, you know, that was pretty low for him to bring that up in the meat of his press conference and kind of citing that as a reason for losing the game, when really you go back and you look, why did State lose? They gave up a 77-yard punt return for a score, an 89-yard run for a score. They threw an interception at the very end of the game, and they could have perhaps tied it. They had a big play wiped out by a motion penalty against their team, and on and on. I mean, you know, they killed themselves when they had a chance at home to beat Clemson on a day when really Clemson was not at its complete best.
You had plenty of opportunities, 6 penalties for 69 yards. 4 of those 6 penalties, Corn, led to Clemson first downs.
All right, thank you very much for the call. Yeah, a lot of stuff in that game, a lot of ugliness after the game. State fans were very frustrated because they thought this was going to be their year.
They were throwing beer bottles at the referees on the way out.
Oh, yeah, it was ugly.
Terrible.
That kind of stuff was ugly. And I've seen some posts from some Clemson fans who said that they were kind of roughed up a little bit, you know, verbally, or I don't think so much physically, but a lot of nastiness there. And it's a long-time rivalry between these two schools. They go way back. They're very similar schools in terms of their mission academically. And State is just like that redheaded stepchild in ACC football. They're good. Occasionally they're really good, but they're just never really, really good for an extended period of time, even from the time when, you know, Lou Holtz had them going well there for a while. And I guess who was the longtime coach there? Coach Edwards, was that his name? They've had their run of success, but, you know, right now they had a chance this year. It was thought this was going to be their year with all that terrific defensive talent, especially up front. Now, listen, Ryan Finley's a heck of a quarterback.
Absolutely,
that guy can spin it, and he'll make a lot of money on the next level. But they can't beat the elite in their own league when, you know, like Clemson, and, you know, Florida State beating them this year is not such a big deal. So they've come up short under Dave Doran. They've lost to South Carolina, and they've lost to Clemson, and they've lost to Notre Dame. And that's not getting it done.
The big knock against NC State is the thing that used to be the big knock against Clemson before Dabo Swinney got here was seasons of success, could never win the big game. And the guy you were thinking of was Earl Edwards, by the way.
Earl Edwards, yes. Hey, by the way,
very good success as well.
Yeah. By the way, just seeing this, looks like Zion Williamson did not show up at USC yesterday. And I'm seeing a tweet here by a basketball writer who's saying he's going to take an official to Clemson this weekend.
Get out.
Of course, signing period starts on Wednesday. And so we shall see what this means with an official by Williamson to Clemson. More of your phone calls coming up after the break. All right, Monday edition, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, 800-956-7266 is the phone number. A couple of quick notes. We'll get back to your phone calls, catch up on a few things. ACC Players of the Week. 2 from Clemson, offensive lineman Mitch Hyatt, defensive end Cleveland Farrell. Farrell, by the way, said today he plans to come back to Clemson for another year. Of course, how about the news last night? first bad. Everybody in Gamecock land in the dumps after hearing Deebo Samuel re-injured the leg, foot, out for the year. But then he tweeted he'll be back next year in a Gamecock uniform. So that's good news. That's the kind of news that you have to have. Probably, are you willing to sacrifice? Let's just say he had not gotten hurt. Information we had last week was he was aiming at coming back for Florida.
He was on the travel roster this week.
And as his tweet indicated, that I think that's what his plan was. So we were right on that. Would you rather have had Deebo come back for these final few games or have him completely healthy, and if all goes well, have him for a full season in 18?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know if anybody necessarily would have known that he would come back for 2018. I think people kind of resigned themselves to, after he was done against Kentucky, he comes back for a 3-game sprint at the end of this year and then tries his luck at the NFL. I think if you would have told Gamecock fans you were guaranteed another full season, or at least to start next season in 2018, I think all of them would have signed up for that.
Mm-hmm. The new odds for the national championship from Bovada. Clemson now 7-1, getting shorter. Georgia's 4-1, Alabama 5-7, Notre Dame is 7-1, Oklahoma's 14-1, Miami and Wisconsin are 16-1. Baker Mayfield is your new leader for the Heisman at 4-7. Barkley is 3-2, and Josh Adams is 8-1.
I know it's probably a better question for tomorrow since we get the rankings tomorrow, but how do you handle the playoff with Georgia and Alabama both winning by 14 at home against teams that they were heavily favored against?
Well, I don't think you drop them at all.
I'm going to say,
I don't think you drop them. I mean, they probably stay 1-2. Look, you have to consider the opposition. I mean, South Carolina is not chop liver, and neither is LSU. I mean, they're not. Neither one is great, but they're still very competitive. And no, I don't think there's going to be any change. You got to look at one thing. You got to keep an eye on is Wisconsin.
Yeah.
They're undefeated. They're running through the Big Ten,
which is what?
Yeah,
which is what?
Well, Iowa. They're going to play Iowa this week, and Iowa just beat up on Ohio State. They still have to play Michigan. Still have to play if things hold up in the championship game.
Still, the X factor is that old little school from South Bend, Indiana, Notre Dame.
Well, they keep winning. They're going to be in.
That's what I'm saying.
They're going to be in.
And they could shut out the Big Ten completely.
The ACC game times for the 18th, Clemson and Citadel will be 12:20, ACC Network. And that same day, USC and Wofford will be 4 o'clock on the SEC alternate channel.
I hate noon games. Oh, wait.
Whatever that means.
That's probably going to be a Mike Morgan game, I think.
Oh, really?
That might be a Mike Morgan game. SEC alternate. That's where they usually throw him.
That's worth tuning in for.
I would love that.
Couple of other things. FCS coaches poll. Wofford moves up to number 8. That's an improvement of 1 spot. James Madison's still number 1. In the stats poll, Wofford is number 8, same as last week, but Furman is number 21 after an off week, and James Madison is still number 1 there.
Always good to move up spots when you don't play anybody.
SoCon, Players of the Week, Defensive Player of the Week, Devin Watson, Wofford corner, special teamer is Wofford kicker Luke Carter. Boy, I tell you what, somebody check Coach Mike Ayers' pulse rate.
Man,
I mean, his teams are just barely getting by, but they're winning. And I imagine that his heart rate has gone way up many times this year.
You love seeing that W at the end, but isn't this like the second or third overtime game they played this year? Crazy.
Anthony Ellis of Charleston Southern, defensive lineman, is the Big South Defensive Player of the Week, and Charleston Southern kicker Tyler Tikak is the Coast Special Teams Player of the Week.
They've had a pretty good, but quietly good last couple of weeks, Charleston Southern.
They have indeed. Upstate basketball coach Kyle Perry has hired former Spartanburg Methodist head coach John Crimmins as an assistant coach. Crimmins, nephew of Bobby Crimmins, yes. And I think we've covered everything. So let's get back to your phone calls. 800-956-7266. Stephen in Charleston, welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
Great, guys. How y'all doing?
Good.
Perfect segue, man. The first thing you brought up whenever y'all got back in commercial about the national championship odds, I just wanted to run through real quick in case you're not familiar with it. So I went to the game last year, surprised my dad with tickets. It was an amazing time as a Clemson fan. So basically with the college football playoff website, you have to basically put a wager, more or less, a down payment, I guess, on face value tickets, which sounds funny because they don't apply it to the face value, and they don't, and it doesn't like help you out in any other way other than allowing you to buy face value tickets. But it's only if your team wins. So it's kind of a gamble. You're basically risking a deposit. But, I think I looked at Game Time last year, and average ticket price is almost $2,000 right now already, a month and a half ahead of time. It's $1,200 a ticket on Ticketmaster, StubHub, stuff like that. But face value is about $450 for the upper deck. So basically, if they make it like last year, I'll pay about $1,100-$1,200 for a pair. So obviously not bad at all, other than the wager. So yeah. And that being said, I felt really good about our chances. Anyways, are pretty good, I guess, with Kelly Bryant's lack of lack of accuracy, I guess, lately. But I was going to wait till after this game, obviously, because I wanted to make sure we got over this last hurdle here. And that's not to take away from Carolina, because I still think very well that Carolina can get them a good game on the last game of the year there. But I guess I was going to ask, and I know you just read off the odds, what is your personal opinion? I want you to make me feel better about my purchase, because I'm still a little nervous about reaching my deposit. So just wanted to think, obviously I think they should run through the regular season schedule. They should beat Carolina, obviously. They should beat Florida State. So really it's a matter of most likely Miami. And then the only thing that really worries me is them matching up with maybe Alabama in the first round instead of, the championship. So I'd almost rather play Georgia or, whatever other team in the first round there. But so just wanted to see your thoughts on that. But y'all have a good night. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Is Kelly Bryant good enough to win a national championship with Clemson? It took a very superhuman effort by Deshaun Watson last year against Alabama for Clemson to win. It took a superhuman effort by Deshaun Watson the previous year for Clemson to have a chance in the national championship game. Deshaun Watson was incredible, and it took that with all the other terrific things and players that Clemson has going for it. It took that unbelievable performance. Is Kelly Bryant capable of giving Clemson that kind of performance at quarterback moving forward? What he's doing now is good enough to win where they are. I mean, look, Florida State's a shell itself. I don't even feel like calling them Florida State. I feel like calling them
Florida Tech.
Tallahassee Teachers College, like what they used to be, whatever. They were a teacher school, for many, many years.
Gotcha.
That's not Florida State.
No.
They are last in the ACC in offense and scoring. I mean, you just don't hear that from Florida State. So you'll beat Florida. You'll beat that team from Tallahassee.
You'll beat the Citadel.
And then you'll probably beat South Carolina and Columbia. And then I don't see why you won't beat Miami in the ACC championship game.
They looked good last week, but I don't know if they're going to beat Clemson.
So my point is, when you get to that national semifinal stage, whether you are playing, who knows, it could be Georgia, it could be Alabama, it could be Wisconsin, it could be Notre Dame. Don't know how that's going to play out just yet. I mean, that's where it takes that superhuman effort from your quarterback, most by and large, to get you that championship. Unless you are now you're an overall balanced team like Alabama. I'm not sure Clemson can say it has that kind of balance in terms of its weaponry. Now, Jalen Hurts has certainly picked it up for Alabama this year. Of course, we know he's a terrific runner. He's improved his passing probably tenfold over last year.
You basically hit on exactly the point that I wanted to make. He is a better runner, Kelly Bryant is, than Deshaun Watson is, at least at this point in his career, in my mind.
I just don't know I can say that because nobody ever stopped Deshaun Watson from running.
But here's the thing. Deshaun Watson's a better passer, and Bryant does not have the kind of threat with his arm that can neutralize and give him the kind of holes that he needs to be able to be a better runner.
Deshaun Watson was a great runner. He's not the physical runner Kelly is.
He's a bigger body.
Was faster and knew how to get away from defenders and get out of bounds. Back in a moment.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
You know, you mentioned about Florida State being a shell of its former self.
Yeah.
If Florida State's a shell of its former self, then Florida is a zombie nation right now. They looked horrible against my alma mater.
Yeah.
And nobody looks horrible against my alma mater. Like,
except when they look in the mirror.
Except when they look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I'm like, good golly, Miss Molly, they were bad.
Malik Zaire's going to be the starter?
Still is, apparently.
Well, he didn't start. Yes, he didn't start Saturday.
He did. No, he did.
Oh, he did start Saturday.
He started Saturday.
Oh.
He was, I think, 13 of 19, no touchdowns, did throw a pick. It was about 150 yards, I think, through the air. But, I mean, they're just – that team's quit. That team completely quit.
Yeah, no question about that.
Now,
I miss Brett Favre.
Now, they could come back.
I miss Brett Favre.
They could come back and actually, you know, maybe make some noise. But, again, noontime kick for the second week in a row. It's hard to expect anything positive out of them.
I miss Brett Favre.
I know. They're showing the Brett Favre highlight from the game with Randy Moss. He did what game or whatever? Not Randy Moss, Antonio Freeman when he made that catch.
I just miss Brett Favre.
Favre.
I mean, I love Aaron Rodgers. I miss Aaron Rodgers. I'd take either one of them playing tonight.
You would take Doug Peterson playing quarterback over for Brett Hundley.
I would take I am not down on Brett Hundley at all. I am not down on him at all. He's young. He's getting his chance. He has shown some good things. He's learning the offense. Their defense has got to play better. That's what I think. Hey, we're brought to you by South Carolina Electric Cooperative, your local electric cooperative, sponsor of the Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. And to find out more about what the co-ops are doing across the state, visit ecsc.org. Save the date, December 9th, for the Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl, and you can get your tickets online. They're cheap. TouchstoneEnergyBowl.com. Get those tickets.
You had something you wanted to mention about South Carolina next year.
Yeah. I want to do recruiting too, and I mentioned this to an earlier caller about USC 2018. I've always felt 2018 would be South Carolina's breakthrough year under Muschamp, and with the news that Samuel's coming back and Bryson Allen Williams is returning and everything else they've got coming back, they get Georgia. They get Georgia at home. I always believe when South Carolina plays Vandy and Kentucky on the road, even though Kentucky's had their number of late, I think that makes for a better SEC schedule because that gives you a chance to play two of the better teams at home. They get they get Georgia at home. They get Tennessee at home. So I think things line up very nicely for South Carolina next year. I think it's going to be just like this year. And who would have thought in the preseason, I think a lot of people felt Georgia, but nobody saw South Carolina finishing second. If they beat Florida, they finish second in the East. That's a heck of an accomplishment. Now, I know the East isn't a whole lot, but you take your little baby steps as you try to grow a program. 8 wins if things work out for the Gamecocks at a minimum. 8 wins, second place in the East, and go win a bowl game. That's a heck of a year for South Carolina and something for Will Muschamp to sell in recruiting and build on for the next year.
And you got 3 winnable non-conference games in Coastal, Marshall, and Chattanooga outside of the Clemson contest next year.
Tip of the hat to Coastal, by the way.
Yes.
Took Arkansas right to the very end and came up just short.
I tell you what, that record for them isn't good, but that team plays a lot of pride for Jimmy Chadwell's.
Real quick, other state teams over the weekend, Western Carolina beat the Citadel. Boy, they've hit the skids. They play Furman this week. Wofford, we mentioned, beat Chattanooga. Charleston Southern, a winner against Gardner-Webb, but Presbyterian lost to Monmouth. Newberry lost to Catawba. Benedict finishes the year on a 5-game winning streak, 7-2.
So we finally didn't jinx somebody, is what you're telling me.
Beat Kentucky State. Congratulations to Mike White, 7-2. North Greenville lost to Delta State, and Limestone lost at Wingate to close out their season. All right, recruiting. We'll get back to your phone calls in a moment. Recruiting here on Sports Talk. 6'6" Zion Williamson of Spartanburg Day was not at USC yesterday, as was expected. However, it looks like, according to a report that we mentioned to you earlier by a basketball writer, writes for I guess it's a national service, Stephen Rogers of Basketball Society and D1 Vision.
Haven't heard of it.
I've been following it because he covers basketball. He's written here that Zion Williamson will take an official visit to Clemson this weekend. So we'll see. We'll see all about that. I have not seen anything from Williamson himself or anybody else that I've been able to put my eyes on, but apparently that is what he's going to do this weekend. DJ Burns was back at USC yesterday. In fact, some fans, Burns, the 6'9", 2019 kid from York Prep, some of the Gamecock students who were there started chanting, "We want Zion," thinking DJ Burns was Zion Williamson. I guess DJ probably chuckled about that. And, of course, the early signing period starts on Wednesday.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right, football. Friday night after his game, Spring Valley linebacker Channing Tindall told reporters he has not made his final decision, even though he was interviewed earlier in the week and pretty much said that he had. He was at Georgia Saturday. He's also got USC, Florida in his top 3, and Auburn remains a factor. Clemson in the final 5 with defensive back Kelvin Joseph of Baton Rouge, former LSU commitment. The others on the short list are Alabama, Florida State, Georgia, and LSU. Georgia replaces Florida on that list. Slated for an official to Clemson this weekend. Defensive end Jarrett Jackson of Palm Beach Garden, Florida, confirmed last night he will take his official to USC this weekend. He's a Louisville commitment. USC offered 2020 running back Zachary Evans of Houston, apparently a big-time runner. Offensive lineman Jamari Sawyer of Atlanta was at Georgia Saturday. Georgia Clemson are his 2 finalists. Talking to his coach, Chris Slade, telling me that could go either way. Both schools are on him hard. Both schools offer him everything that he wants. Georgia being number 1 in the CFP ranking, something that is certainly big to the players in the state of Georgia, could be a factor as Sawyer tries to figure things out. Coach said Sawyer will take his official visit to Clemson for the Citadel game. And I said, "You sure it's not this weekend?" He goes, No, it's the Citadel weekend that he's coming in. In fact, Clemson is trying to get most of the remaining big-timers to come in for the Citadel weekend. Some will come in for the Florida State weekend, but they want to be able to concentrate on these guys when they play Citadel and not so much when they've got Florida State in town. Sawyer has set his announcement for December 15th. Baseball, outfielder Kyle Horton of Forest, Virginia, flipped from USC to Charleston Southern. His brother plays at Charleston Southern. There you go with recruiting. We invite you to check it out on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. On Twitter, just use the hashtag ST Recruiting. Now, if you know what the hashtag is, Will, it's that little number sign.
Pound.
Some of our audience might not be familiar with that.
Must be the pounds. Used to be the pound.
Well,
sign.
I call it the number sign. That's what I like to call it.
Understand.
So hit hashtag ST Recruiting. Take you right to it. To the phones, we go back again. Mr. Leonard, who's been manning the phones tonight, we go to Billy in Greenville. Billy, welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
I was one of the few Carolina fans who thought that South Carolina would give them a pretty good showing. I thought that they played, pretty well. But I think the difference when you have NFL caliber quarterback and a running back, but also I think that the Rico Daddle, is it Daddle?
Daddle. Mm-hmm.
I think that somebody, the blocking, like when right before half, I think we missed that a whole lot more. I don't know if those running backs really blocked that well. Did this year come?
Billy, from the standpoint of South Carolina, if you are a South Carolina fan who is not impressed with the showing against Georgia, then you have an identity crisis of where you think South Carolina should be, because I see no fault in South Carolina's game that they played this past weekend other than the fact that they didn't tackle well. And Rico Dowdle's absence has nothing to do with the fact that they didn't run the football well. It was because they got out-physicaled up front by Georgia's very dominant defensive line.
And they blew a golden opportunity early. I mean, Georgia just handed them the football. Good job by South Carolina, falling on the football. But you gotta get points there. And first of all, you got to get a touchdown. They couldn't get a touchdown, and then they missed the field goal. And that just
sucked it all out.
Sucked some of that air right out of it. But you know what? They recovered from that and still hung in the ball game.
Jake Bentley makes some superhuman throws, but does not make enough of the easy throws. And that's what leads to, I think, a lot of South Carolina's ineptitude and lack of rhythm offensively. He had a very makeable throw to Ortre Smith on third down in that drive, and he missed him by about 10 yards.
Yeah, he's 61%, and you'd like for him to be 67, 68%. Even some of the completions that he throws, the ball's not in a good spot for the receiver to catch it and make a move and go. That's something he's really got to improve on. Top of the hour break. We'll be back. song. I'm a good sport, but this wasn't cute. I don't care about all the flash, but definitely don't want a game-long chant of someone else's name. That's great. Mind if I use those quotes?
Oh, he said that?
Yeah. Okay. All right, here we go. Coming your way.
So he's telling me he's a little bitter?
I think he's not happy about it.
It's kind of bad.
Because, I was sitting in the press area. You know where that is in relation to the bench. And so I had my camera with a zoom. The camera. I thought about bringing my binoculars. So I zoomed in down there and I saw 3 guys sitting behind the bench. And there was a kind of like a Here we go, sir. I remember what I did last night. What did I say? Use that. Yeah. I'll put that in there. And do that. Do that. Okay, here we go. I think I mentioned Channing Tindall in this morning's report. And I actually recorded it and remembered to put it up on Aces.
Look at that.
It's amazing.
New week, man. New week.
Yeah, I came out. I was focused, and I said, I'm not going to have a messy week like I had. Look, every once in a while you have a messy week. And
Try Ritalin. Or Adderall.
Is that good for sex, or what's that good for?
It's good for focusing your mind. No.
I don't take medications unless I absolutely have to. And I haven't reached the point yet where I absolutely have to. You ready, sir? All right, here we go in 3, 2, 1. 6'6" Zion Williamson of Spartanburg Day did not make it to USC on Sunday for an unofficial visit, as was in 3, 2, 1. 6'6" Zion Williamson of Spartanburg Day did not make it to USC Sunday for an unofficial visit, as was expected, but apparently he's going to Clemson this coming weekend for an official visit. A report by BasketballSociety.com states that Williamson will be on the Clemson campus for that official visit. Of course, he's already taken officials to Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, and Duke. The early signing period begins on Wednesday. 2019 big man DJ Burns of York Prep was at USC on Sunday for another unofficial visit. He remains very interested in the Gamecocks. Clemson's in the Final 5 with defensive back Kelvin Joseph of Baton Rouge. The others on his short list are Alabama, Florida State, Georgia, and LSU. Defensive end Jarrett Jackson of Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, confirms he'll take his official to USC this coming weekend. Phil Kornbluth, South Carolina, Radio Network Sports.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Rocking and rolling on a Monday night from downtown Columbia. Further evidence why I think 2018 lines up well for South Carolina is that schedule. We're just sitting here taking a look at it. I mean, the Gamecocks' home SEC games.
You don't want to count wins for 2018 when we haven't even finished 2017
But
yet.
you have to think about the future, and that's what I think South Carolina has reason for real optimism in 2018 when you consider the home league games will be against Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Missouri. Okay, all beatable teams. And the road games will be Florida, Ole Miss, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. I mean, my goodness. And then you mentioned the other, and they got to go to Clemson, of course, and then they got the other 3 games.
Coastal, Marshall, and Chattanooga.
That's a lot. I mean, if they don't get it done next year, then that would be a big disappointment for South Carolina.
By the way, guess who they get 2019 cross division?
I give up.
Home Alabama.
Oh, hey, listen, last time Alabama came to Columbia, they left with their tails tucked between their legs. Thank you, Stephen Garcia.
Was that John Parker Wilson at quarterback?
I don't remember, but Alabama was #1 in the country.
Okay.
And South Carolina took them to the woodshed.
Could have been John Parker Wilson.
As I remember. We have the coach, Zach Willis, standing by. We've had a couple of callers waiting for a long time. Let's give them a couple of quick shouts, and we'll get to the coach for 1st and 10. We go back to the lines. It's John in Augusta. Hey, John, how are you?
I'm fine. I just wanted to give a big congratulations to Will Muschamp and the South Carolina team. I am a Georgia fan, but they came over. He brought a good, balanced team, and they just ran a little short of depth. And I guess it's a good thing for the SEC that Hurst will probably be playing in the NFL next year, correct?
Yes.
You sure about that?
Well, I'm so he won't be playing at South Carolina anymore, at least.
I mean, you think for sure he's gone. I mean, I know he's an older guy. He's having a good year. He could come back next year and like have a John Mackey Award winner kind of year. But he's older. He's 24, 25.
I think he does. I think he's shown enough, I think.
Yeah, he's a terrific player.
He's got another year of eligibility, right?
Yeah.
He's the best player they've got.
Very talented.
He and Bentley right now, the best players. But Will Muschamp, being a defensive captain, had a heck of a game plan, just ran a little short of depth. And my hat's off to them. They will beat Florida, and they'll give Dabo all he wants.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. One more real quick, and then we'll get to the coach. We thank you for your patience. Tanner in where? Rock Hill. Tanner in Rock Hill. Tanner, how are you, sir?
Hey, good. How y'all doing?
Good.
I wanted to get y'all's prediction for Saturday, and I wanted to also see what y'all thought about maybe Hayden Hurst coming back next year, but like y'all already answered that question.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Saturday is beat-down day in the Palmetto State. I think Clemson will roll over Florida State. We're going to hear a lot tomorrow from Dabo about Florida State's great recruiting and talent and all that, but they don't have a quarterback right now that can do anything with Clemson. Let's bring in Zach Willis while we're talking about this. And there's no reason to think Clemson won't swarm them, and there's no reason to think the Gamecocks, a Florida team that, like Will said, have pretty much has mailed it in now, complete chaos in Gainesville. The Gamecocks should roll over Florida. I think both will cover their respective spreads without trouble. As we bring in Zach Willis here to Sports Talk, 1st and 10 with Coach Zach Willis. What do you think of the prediction there? Within reason that both Clemson and the Gamecocks will take care of the visitors from the Sunshine State where the sun's not shining, except in Miami?
I think it's safe to say they should be heavy favorites. The biggest surprise I had last Saturday was how Florida laid down. That was amazing. They never seen them do that before.
Same. I mean, it's odd because, you'd think sometimes with an interim coach, you get a nice little enthusiasm, but Sleepy Time Kick in Columbia, Missouri, they just
Sleepy Time Kick.
They look.
That's their secret weapon, isn't it?
It is.
To get you to play the 11 o'clock game.
The 11 a.m. kick. It's something of it's a thing of beauty for them. But from my point of view, Zach, it's hard to see anything positive come out of that situation right now.
They've got to find a way to start speaking from their perspective. They got to find a way to circle the wagons. And man, I don't even know if they got any wagons to circle, psychologically speaking. I wouldn't have been shocked if Missouri did. Missouri's got a bad football team this year. We saw them in Columbia get destroyed, and they've gotten better. But man, was it 45-14 or something like that? I mean, they destroyed Florida. That blew my mind.
Let's talk about Gamecocks and Tigers from this past weekend. Let's start with the Gamecocks. No such thing as moral victories, and I'm sure Will Muschamp told his people that afterwards. But I also got the feeling, based on his comments, and Will was there, that he walked away there satisfied that his team fought to the end, had a chance in the second half, had a chance in the fourth quarter, but just knew that they were up against an opponent that outmanned them.
And, really it was two running backs. There were several times in the fourth quarter, especially Georgia, where South Carolina whipped Georgia up front. Their D-line whipped Georgia's O-line. It's one-on-one with a defensive back or linebacker in the hole, and those two dang running backs from Georgia just made plays. It was a recruiting deal. And I agree with everything that I've heard. I was like, hey, South Carolina is right where they want to be. They're competing. There's a couple of little things that I wish I would have seen that may have swung it, but it would have been a long shot. Really, I think that especially the defensive backfield for South Carolina has vastly improved over the year. And that's what you look at when you measure a coaching staff. It's a much better football team they started off with earlier this year.
You mentioned the line play of South Carolina on the defensive side. I feel like conversely, Zach, on the offensive side of the football, they got beat up by Georgia's defensive front, and that led to them not being able to run the football and being one-dimensional, something that they said going into the game they could not be to have any kind of success against Georgia.
Yeah, they both defensive lines, really had their way. South Carolina, obviously not quite as much as Georgia. The biggest thing there is it's a talent deal, and they've changed their scheme. They've gotten a little bit more sound there, but they just ran out of talent in that area. And you're right, they got whipped up front all day. I don't think it was a surprise to anybody. But we saw what we hoped we would see. They just couldn't find a way to capitalize. Georgia didn't make enough mistakes. And the talent was too wide there. It was too big of a breach.
Now they've had success against Vandy running those stretch plays and those outside runs. I don't know why they thought they were trying to run the ball inside against Georgia when those stretch plays and counters seemed to work last week. I didn't see very many of them against Georgia.
I think Vandy and Georgia, you comparing apples and oranges first off.
True. True.
But but you're right in the fight. Hey, you need to give it a shot and at least do play action off of it. And really, at the core of this thing, I want to get this out because I think this is really important. You're going in and playing number one team in the country. You're competing with them in the third quarter. Georgia was playing dirty, and they were throwing over there. A ton of helmets that were missed. We're going to have that rule. But it's unfortunate. They were holding South Carolina really bad. They were trying to bully.
Did you say Georgia was playing dirty?
Yeah.
There was one chop block that got really badly on DJ Smith that he got hurt on.
Yeah. And, there were some cheap shots, and they were holding, and the referees weren't calling it. I'd like to see them real bow up right there, maybe get a 15-yard penalty and create a us against them mentality. Use the referees as a scapegoat. It's the only chance you got to win. You're competing. Your kids are doing all they can. Now, you got to find an emotional strike there, light that match, and make it personal. Make it personal if you want to beat these guys, and you do it because you got to punch a bully in the mouth. And I know that's politically incorrect, but I ain't running for office. I'm trying to win office. So, and they got one more chance before they need to do that. We all know when that is.
Yeah,
but that's what's got to happen for him to become the head coach we all want him to be. He's a great strategist and all that. But, he was a wild man when he was a defensive coordinator. You watch him on the field, he goes, we need to see that in him when they play Clemson if we want a ball game. And
all right.
Just the head coach talking.
All right. Hang on, Zach. We'll come back with you. More First and 10 with Zach Willis. We'll look at the Clemson win at NC State and more when we come back.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
We continue with Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Monday night. Reminder, upcoming on December 9th, it's the North-South Touchstone Energy Cooperative Bowl in Myrtle Beach. Looking forward to being there throughout the week leading up to the game. We'll have the game for you here on our stations around the state, brought to you by the South Carolina Electric Cooperative. Be sure to check out what the co-ops are doing for you across the state. You can visit ecsc.org. And to get tickets in advance, good idea, go to their website, touchstoneenergybowl.com. Touchstoneenergybowl.com. Tickets for $15 until the 24th. Then they rise to $20. The man we're talking to, Zach Willis, made a living out of going down to the North-South game and plucking excellent in-state talent, did you not?
Pretty good. It was a great game for us, ain't no doubt.
Yep. And your roster at Newberry in particular loaded with South Carolinians, and I think at Pikeville you had some as well. Real quick, before we get to Clemson, and Will, you can chime in on this as well.
Yes.
From what I've seen of the game on video, we talked last week, coming off USC's win, about how effective they were and how smart it was to run Jake Bentley. Didn't see any of that Saturday. Did I miss that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so why?
There was a couple of them.
Why, Zach? Why did they not implement that part of their running game to try to get it going as well as they did the previous couple of weeks?
No, why they didn't run, because you guys called it the counter, I would call it a power play, and then run Bentley off of that, and then throw in play action, especially with Hurst having the mismatches he had. I don't know. I mean, I didn't understand a couple of play calls they made. One was at the end of the half when they were going to just run the clock out, and then they started throwing the ball after they ran it on first down and almost got in a little bit of trouble right there at the end of the half with almost an interception.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That'd be something you'd have to ask him. There's been things that all year long that we've talked about that kind of mystify us as the rhyme and reason. They obviously saw something, but what it is, I don't know.
So I do have clarification on that, because I completely lambasted Will Muschamp for his terrible clock management, and what he said was they were basically trying to put a sneak attack on Georgia because they had a dig and go route. That they loved, and apparently they ran it on the play that Jake Bentley threw the interception, but Jake was hit as he threw and ended up throwing a wounded duck, and he got picked off. But I rewatched it. Brian Edwards was open by about 15 yards, and if he would have hit him, that would have been a touchdown. So, it's good.
Fair. I agree with that. But the thing is that's absolutely true. That's probably he was open. I mean, you could see it. He was wide open. But the risk is you got to rely on that shaky offensive line to get that ball off, because the dig and go is a slow developing play.
True.
And I also noticed, too, Jake had, I don't know, maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 passes batted down. Is that strictly on him, or do you blame the offensive line some for not doing the technique to get those defensive linemen's hands down?
If you know you're going to throw a shallow route, cut block up front or punch those guys in the stomach with your hands, not literally punch them. But, yes, the technique thing, yes, again, we talk about marrying the route with the protection. And they're not running the protection. You should cut block, take the guy's legs out from under them. Their hands are down on the ground, and you throw right over them. You watch Clemson, they do it all the time. They'll cut the edge of the side they're throwing to.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma State, all of them do it.
Mm-hmm. They used to teach us if guys are getting their hands up, punch them in the chest, but they don't have any pads.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Not literally, but
yes.
It's that simple though, Phil. It's a simple game.
Yes,
it's not hard, and it's been frustrating to watch in some instances. Now they've done some great things too, and they didn't play bad the other day. But if you're going to win those kind of games, you got to know how to do it, and you got to learn. You got to put yourself out there. But the risk has to be calculated and orchestrated properly to be effective against a great team.
All right, to Clemson, where the Tigers had a battle on their hands against NC State all day long, fell behind early, turned this game in the third quarter, and then survived in the fourth quarter. What did you see in particular when they came out of the locker room in the third quarter that maybe they changed up that led to them holding State? I think State had 50 yards in the third quarter. Clemson outscored them 10-0 in the quarter to take over the game at that point.
Clemson just imposed their will on them. When you got that kind of talent, you can do that. I'm sure that those coaches got up in those players' ears and basically had a come to Jesus meeting in that locker room. Not that they were doing horribly, but they couldn't let the distraction, because evidently NC State's turned into quite a noisy arena. They rebuilt that place and it looks impressive. And they had a great environment for a game, and they rattled the Tigers a little bit. And Clemson had to come back from it, but being the kind of team they are, they did, and it was impressive to watch.
Actually outscored them 14-0 in the third quarter, and then moved on from there and held on to win. It was a game, and Dabo Swinney said this yesterday, in which Kelly Bryant had his worst game of the season. He started off very slowly, had an early interception, 3 for his first 10, 0 for his first 5, but then he kind of got it together and put it together and hit some big passes. They were able also to use a big play in the return game, a big play in the running game as well. Just kind of showed their speed and overall athleticism in busting those big plays and turning the tide in this game.
The thing about Clemson is that they only have great athletes, they got great football players, and they're tough, and they're physical, and they wear on you. And North Carolina State got hit in the mouth, and you can only play on emotion so long against a team who can match your intensity. And Clemson's played the toughest schedule in the country, in my book, by far.
Mm-hmm.
And so this ain't no big deal for them. They've been there before. I'm sure they told each other that, players to player, coach to player, and so on. And it showed up, and Kelly Bryant's got character. He's proven he's tough. He's going to go out there and give you whatever he's got, and he's going to give it all to you. And they're able to shake off mistakes.
And, you know,
come back and shake them off.
Shows you what we know. That, you know, we're talking about ETN emerging as the guy, but Tavian Feaster with that big 89-yard run, and once he got into the second level and beyond, nobody was going to catch him. I think he made some noise that he hasn't gone away and is going to be there for the ensuing games ahead.
Oh, yeah. And see, that a coach's best friend is competition for position or playing time. Now, all of a sudden, you got two great backs duking it out, and they got another kid laying there that's super physical, that's got his own role. They've got 3 really good backs, and they're all fighting for playing time, not just to win the game, but to win playing time. And it's an incredible dynamic that always works.
My only concern, Zach, is Clemson's secondary, because of the depth that they have had to take a hit from with no Fields and no Edmond. You had to put Ray McLeod there on defense, and they just picked him apart on that last drive. It just seems to me that that's a position of concern if they can't get Fields and Edmond back and healthy.
Well, you know, we talked about last week, we looked ahead a little bit. The defensive backs are the weakness. If there's such a thing on that defense, that's where they're weak. And to have those injuries, I'm going to be honest, it's still amazing to me how they won that game. That should have been catastrophic from the defensive standpoint. For them to win that game with a receiver playing corner, pretty doggone impressive, but it's a definite concern.
Well, they did. Harmon's the receiver over there. He's a tall kid, a one-time USC commitment. And they went to him, the back shoulder throw, and they beat McLeod there early, but he got him back. He defensed a play down there about midway through that drive and kind of helped it stall just a little bit. Still, you know, if they don't have that motion penalty and that play stands, it went to about the 4-yard line, who knows? It could have been another overtime game there.
It very well could have been, but I like Clemson's character. They win. They know how to win. They don't know how to lose. McLeod ran that kid out of bounds. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That guy's playing receiver. He takes one of their best receivers, just destroyed the route right after he got beat.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't hang his head. Think about how rare that is. He didn't hang his head for 1 second. He came back and made the play. And you're right, North Carolina State couldn't make the play. They choked when they had their chance, and Clemson didn't. And Dabo said it. We didn't flinch. That's an old Lou Holtz term. They didn't flinch, and that was the difference in that ball game. But that's what champions do.
Okay, one-word answer to this question. 3 weeks to the Palmetto Bowl. Is South Carolina gaining on Clemson as we head towards that game?
Maybe.
You said you weren't running for anything. That sounded like a very politically correct answer.
I'll text what I think, but I can't do it in one word.
All right, save it for next week. Thank you, Zach. Zach Willis, 1st and 10 here on Sports Talk. We'll be right back. Been a busy night here on Sports Talk. We keep it rolling now. We turn our attention to high school football. First Friday night of the playoffs behind us. Talk about it with David Shelton of the High School Sports Reports and the Charleston Post and Courier. Of course, our high school football reports here on Sports Talk, brought to you by Farm Bureau. With new auto insurance rates from Farm Bureau Insurance, you could be saving a whole lot of money. Even if you've received a quote before, rates are now more competitive than ever. So get a no-obligation quote today at favrates.com. David is with us, and your analysis of the first round of the playoffs, pretty quiet from an upset standpoint. Maybe just one really true one jumps out at you?
Yeah, I think Westwood beating North Augusta, which I have to give you credit. You asked me about that Friday night.
Thank you.
As a possible 4-1. You know how hard that is for me to give you credit. But
I know.
I do.
Dang.
When I do.
It's painful.
But yeah, it hurts. It really does. But yeah, that was a big upset. North Augusta undefeated. Westwood's got some good players. Got a really good quarterback, Elijah Heatley, who ended up having a really good game. North Augusta was without their running back, Gibson, which kind of hurt them. But, I'm not going to take anything away from Westwood. They went on the road, beat an undefeated team, 4th ranked in the state. So really that was the big one. There were a couple of 3 beaten 3s or 3 beaten 2s that were pretty even matchups going in. West Florence, Ashley Ridge, I said Friday night, I thought that had the chance to be a really good game. Ended up going double overtime, and West Florence earned the prize to go to Dutch Fork this week. So, but I think you're going to see some shakedowns this week. I think there's some good matchups where one good team is going to get sent home, like site, Conway, Spring Valley, Cane Bay, Hartsville. They play each other. So, I mean, there's some good matchups in week 2 of the playoffs.
Yeah, things get really juicy as we go to week 2. And I tell you, a game I'm looking at for next week, or this week, I guess, that looks good is the Spring Valley at Conway game. Couple of great stories there. And the Spring Valley is a team that I don't know if people expected them to be this good going into the season. They've had a year where they've lost one time. And, of course, we know about the turmoil at Conway just prior to the season. And that coaching staff there has held it together to get them where they are now. They've had a great year.
Yeah, they have. They've kind of used the whole thing as a rallying point, and they got good players. Conway's got some really good players: receiver, quarterback, lineman. They're a legitimate team. And you mentioned Spring Valley. No way did I have that team at 10-1. I figured they could be a 7, 8, 9 win team, but they've had a really good regular season and a first round of the playoffs. They look very impressive. That's going to be a really good game, and the winner of that game would go to Fort Dorchester, assuming Fort beat Carolina Forest. But and one of those teams, either one of those teams, could give Fort Dorchester some issues. We'll wait and see how it plays out over the next week, but that's going to be a really good matchup. I definitely believe that.
I know that we're talking a lot about TL Hanna earlier in the year about them kind of continuing to churn. I'm surprised that Burns didn't give them more trouble.
Yeah, I was a little. I was not surprised that Hanna won.
Correct.
But I thought Burns would give them. I just thought they would be more competitive. And really, I'm not. I haven't pinpointed. I'm not in the Burns arena. I don't know what goes on there. But the last several weeks, their defense just fell apart. They didn't stop anybody. And they were really good on defense early on the year. That's really what we were talking about, is how improved they were defensively. But down the stretch, they didn't have an answer for anybody. And T.O. Hanna, their offense is such where they got 4 or 5 running backs and a quarterback. I mean, they run that option, that wishbone type wing option attack, and they got a lot of guys that can score touchdowns, and a lot of them did score the other night. So. I didn't see 50, whatever it was, 50-something to 7. I thought it would be a little more competitive, but it wasn't competitive from the first quarter on. I mean, it wasn't close early.
David, I think 2 of the best stories of the entire year anywhere in the state happen to be right here in the Midlands area. You touched on Westwood, but I'm talking about Lower Richland and Lugoff-Elgin. Lugoff-Elgin getting a win over Dreer last week, and that's their first playoff win in many, many years. And then Lower Richland, which is a number 1 seed, won their region, been way, way down for a long time, and having a great year and advanced to the second round. How much longer are these stories going to play out in a positive way?
Well, to be quite honest, I think both of them in their season this Friday night. I
That's
think,
not very nice.
I think Myrtle Beach is a little bit too strong for Lower Richland. I think, their tradition, the way they're playing right now, their offense is scoring in bunches. I don't think Myrtle Beach will blow Lower Richland out, but I just kind of think Lower Richland is going to run out of gas. If they were to beat Myrtle Beach, that would be a huge story, and they would really be sort of the Cinderellas of the playoffs because of where their program's been. And then you talk about Lugoff-Elgin again, 7 wins. And I think before Matt Campbell got there, they had won 3 games total the previous 3 years, a couple of, 1-win seasons. So they've done a great job. But again, they're running into a Berkeley crowd at Berkeley, which is going to be a very tough second round matchup. I think Berkeley, aside from Hartsville, Berkeley will be the best team Lugoff has played. And that's a tough road to hoe, especially on the road. But Berkeley is very beatable, though. I mean, sometimes they don't show up and get going until second, third quarter. Now, when they get going, they're pretty good. But if Lugoff could somehow go up there and jump on them, get a couple touchdown lead early somehow, they would have a shot. But I think both of them are long shots to win this week.
I feel for Belton Honeypath struggling to beat Union County and then having to run in with Rewarded to play South Point, which you've said is basically the best team in the state at any level. But the game that I'm looking forward to also in 4A, Greer South Aiken, I think that could be a really highly contested contest.
I definitely think you're right. I think that'll be one of the more entertaining games. Both teams can score. Both teams can do it through the air. They both have good quarterbacks, really good quarterbacks. And I think you're right. South Aiken was a hair from beating South Point last year in the Upper State Finals. I want to say it went overtime, but I know it was very, very close. So this South Aiken team has been through this playoff gauntlet, but Greer has been so dominant all season long. And a lot of people have Greer facing South Point in the Upper State. I could see either one of these teams advancing to South Point at some point in the Upper State Finals. But I really think the Greer South Aiken game, if you're one of those that like those high scoring games that kind of go back and forth, I think that has the potential to do that. Anything
Surprise you in Skeeza on Friday night? Just to mention Skeeza.
Nope. I think you got Hammond and Ben Lippin are in the semifinals. Hammond's going to play Hammond's going to play Porter-Gaud, who they beat earlier in the year and should beat. And Ben Lippin's going to play Manning, which was Lawrence Manning, which is a very close game first time. But a lot of people, including me, kind of think it's going to be Hammond, Ben Lippin for the finals. And then in 2A, defending champ First Baptist is continuing to roll. Robert E. Lee is their opponent this week. That'll be a little bit of a test. And then Class A is just kind of wide open. Thomas Hayward looks like one of the teams to beat there, but there were no upsets in the first round, except I guess Florence Christian upsetting, and I can't remember who they beat, but I think their team was they won by an upset, which but most of the Skeeza went pretty much to chalk.
Yeah, I'm really keeping a close watch on 8-man Division II.
Yeah, I bet you are.
Jeff Davis and Patrick Henry going to go head-to-head. Andrew Jackson and Clarendon Hall going to go head-to-head. So,
Andrew Jackson's a 2-time defending state champs and got a long winning streak. So they're the favorite.
They are indeed. Okay. David, we thank you very much. Have yourself a great week. We'll talk to you Friday night leading into round 2.
Okay. You guys take care.
Thank you. 8-man Division II. Do you know how small your school has to be to be Division II and playing 8-man football? That's almost teeny.
I know I impressed you with that South Aiken mention. I know I impressed you.
You're all over it. Well, I mean, that's what we pay you for, to have that kind of in-depth knowledge.
All over it.
We'll be back to talk about the Panthers in a moment.
Stewart. The flip to McCaffrey. Chuck and left. Got it. Touchdown. Carolina.
Nobody home on the left side. As soon as the pitch was made, that was a touchdown. Great play design.
Well. How about those Panthers taking care of the Falcons yesterday in Charlotte? Big win as the race continues to be very hot in the division, with New Orleans staying hot, so the Panthers had to match it. Mick Mixon, voice of the Panthers, now with us, and gotta like that overall victory. Running game was outstanding, over 200 yards rushing. Cam Newton was doing his thing, throwing and running. So I gotta believe around Pantherland, everybody was very happy with what they saw yesterday.
A lot of good things about it, Corn. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I mean, it was the Falcons. That makes it sweet. It was a home game. As you mentioned, the Panthers needed it to keep pace in the division. And then when you fall behind and then kind of wake back up and crawl back in it, I mean, there was a minute or two in that game Sunday where getting blown out was on the table, down 10-0. Atlanta had the ball, and Mike Adams' interception helped turn things around. And then Cam Newton, I think a lot of credit needs to be given to him for just the emotional shoulders that he put the entire building on, and just almost seemed to will the Panthers back in the football game with his spirit.
And you got to give the defense a lot of credit too. They hold the Falcons down in the running game. They are struggling running the football in general, but I'm sure they came into the game hoping to get their running game going, and the Panthers never let it get going.
Yeah, it's a tough front seven to run against, pretty salty. And then the Panthers got a little lucky. Let's just call it for what it is. If Julio Jones makes a catch that he will make 499 times out of 500, then we may be talking about a Panther loss right now. But he did not catch it, and it helped the Panthers hold on to the lead. And then it was also big to win, Corn, because this was your first game after the Kelvin Benjamin trade. So if you don't win that game, now all the, oh my gosh, what are you doing? You trade away your best player. If you'd had Kelvin Benjamin, you wouldn't have lost. Some of that talk gets started back up.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned something last week that kind of stuck with me. You usually do, but this one does. And I look at Cam Newton rushing it 9 times for 86 yards, and then all they're asking him to do in the passing game. And you said that they're asking Cam to do a lot, not only in the running game, but also the passing game. How sustainable is that over the length of an NFL season?
Thank you for your kind words. I enjoyed the ramp up to your question, possibly even more so than the question itself. But I'm no Amos Alonzo Stagg, but this notion that a running quarterback, that you get your quarterback hurt if you try to have him run the ball, has always, to me, seemed asinine, especially if your quarterback is a very heady athlete like Russell Wilson, who knows how to end the play, get his legs up, use the rules that protect running quarterbacks at times, and then use the sidelines. The quarterback's safer. Why isn't a quarterback safer running the ball? Because he can dictate how the play ends, as opposed to standing in the pocket hoping that the $6 million a year left tackle does his job and keeps a greater athlete, the defensive end, from goring you in the back.
Yeah. Yeah, you're no Amos Alonzo Stagg, but you once went to a Stagg party, as I recall.
Oh gosh, Corn, I don't know, man. I've forgotten everything. I remember only how much I love my bride.
There you go. So you get the win. You keep pace with the Saints. I mean, they're ahead, but you keep pace with them, and they are just red hot. You get the Dolphins at home a week from tonight, then a bye week. So I mean, the Dolphins, watched them yesterday a little bit. That should take care of that business. And then you got 2 weeks to get ready for the Jets and the Saints, back-to-back road games coming off your bye that will probably determine a lot about where this team is going in the regular season.
Good call. I agree. And wouldn't it be great to get Ryan Khalil, Greg Olsen back after the bye week, maybe Demir Byrd?
Oh, yeah. I would say absolutely.
You'd have a different set of problems, though, especially if you're rolling. How do you integrate those guys back into an offensive unit that might have some snap and rhythm to it at that time?
I'm not asking you to play Marty Herney in a movie or anything, Mick, but the explanation behind the Kelvin Benjamin trade. Obviously, it holds up for 1 week, but at least in the minds of Panther fans, it was a bit of a head scratcher, wasn't it?
Well, the timing of it was non-traditional, but I think there are some in football circles that feel that Kelvin Benjamin is not as good. He's just not as good a player as Devin Funchess, and you sort of had two of the same guy. Funchess a more natural split end, so move him to X. Try to get more speed on the field with Curtis Samuel,
True,
Christian McCaffrey, Kalen Clay, and others. And then you got the value that you could get for Benjamin, and you get $8.5 million in cap space back.
Makes sense to me. You sound like Marty. Any injuries of note from yesterday?
Yeah, a couple, Phil. Mike Adams got hurt. He got his shoulder jacked up, but he apparently said after the game he didn't think it would keep him out for any sustainable length of time. And then Chris Manhurst, the tight end, played basketball at Canisius, captain on that basketball team for a couple of years. We talked about him last week. He got a concussion, so he's in the protocol.
Kuechly's okay, 11 tackles, everything feeling good with him, huh?
Real good, yeah. There was a great moment on the Fox telecast when Kuechly was bleeding from around his nose, and any linebacker, especially if it's just a little bit of an owie and nothing chronic, you get a little blood on your uniform. It kind of maybe lets you take it to another level.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you got your show coming up with the Panthers here in the Carolinas. Who you got as your guests?
Kalen Clay, wide receiver. You're going to love him, Corn. He's a wide receiver, been with 5 different NFL teams in 2 years. Father to a 1-month-old baby girl, beautiful baby girl named Kennedy. He's going to talk to us. We're going to try to probe him with some impactful questions here in a bit.
All right, my man. Have a great show. Thank you so much. Guess we won't talk to you next Monday. You'll be busy. Maybe we'll catch you next Tuesday.
Yeah, sure. Call me Tuesday. That'd be great.
You got it, man. Thank you.
Appreciate you, brother.
You got it. Voice of the Panthers, Mick Mixon.
Was he insulting my question when he was asking about that? About Cam Newton? It's a little.
How do you get your voice to go so high like that?
I got vocal range.
Is that your feminine side that you
No,
reach
it's called I have range. I have
you sing? Are you a singer? I don't know that much about you. Are you a singer?
I used to.
Yeah.
I used to be in choir.
Oh.
Church choir.
Good.
When I was so inclined.
Yeah. You were asking a question.
I was asking a question. Did he not appreciate my question about Cam Newton?
I think he complimented your question.
He did.
So
but then he also said that the notion that a quarterback putting himself out there and making himself vulnerable it was an asinine statement, apparently.
I wasn't paying attention.
I know you weren't.
Maybe you're right.
I could tell.
Something was up on the screen there with Muschamp. What was that? Did you catch that?
I did not. It was something with Lewis Black they were doing. It was some sort of
Now, who is he?
He's a comedian.
Oh.
Do you know who Lewis Black is?
I have no idea.
He's
basically Brian. You know who Lewis Black is? Brian is more connected to the celebrity world.
Lewis Black is basically the New York version of you.
Which is what? Boring?
I didn't say you were boring. Did I say you were boring?
Handsome?
He's very opinionated.
Uh-huh.
He's an older gentleman.
That doesn't sound like me.
And sometimes he says things that rub people the wrong way.
That definitely doesn't sound like me. I don't know why you would compare me. All right, tomorrow.
That sounds exactly like you.
Tomorrow night here on Sports Talk. Another great show. One great show on top of another.
You wanted to flip to the Clemson trip?
My mood will be dependent upon what happens over the next 3.5 hours. If the Packers win, I'll be in a great mood. If they lose to the Lions, Kevin Cohen's team, I'll never hear the end.
By the way, don't sleep on the Jets in 2 weeks either, Panther fans.
No, the Jets are doing all right.
The 5-5, soon to be 5-5 Jets, unless they lose to Fitzmagic, which could happen.
All right,
that's them.
Talking Tuesday tomorrow, we'll bring you the latest from Muschamp on the Gators. That's going to be kind of fun.
I still want to ask Muschamp about that clock management in that first half. It was Todd Bowles-esque.
Yeah, knock yourself out. And we'll have, of course, Dabo Sweeney on the Seminoles tomorrow.
50 minutes for Dabo tomorrow on Florida State?
Yeah, about 40, 45, I think.
You know what tomorrow is? It's going to say it's the greatest game of the year. Biggest game of the year.
No question. Thank you, Brian. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.